Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you might be in this fine world. You are listening to another episode of the Go Farther series here on the Startup Selling Show, talking sales with Scott Sambucci. That's me. Today's episode is going to be a little bit different here in our Go Farther series. I've been thinking hard about all of the ways that I've been sharing with you different lessons, different perspectives on how I have personally learned how to go farther. And hopefully some of those would be helpful for you. And I was remembering a podcast episode that I did way back in 2017 with a guy named Dan Waldschmidt. Dan Waldschmidt. Dan is a best-selling author. His book is called Edgy, E-D-G-Y, Edgy Conversations, How Ordinary People Achieve Outrageous Success. Dan, I love his LinkedIn profile. He calls himself Kick-Ass Dad. He's also a CEO of a company called Panzura. He's an ultra runner. So right there, he and I have a lot in common. He's a B2B tech nerd. Again, something else that we have in common. He's also the 10th person on the planet to complete the Run Everest challenge. And just last year, he ran his first 200-mile ultra marathon. He's run many, many races, but his first 200-mile ultra marathon, he came in third place overall and second. He was the second male in this race called the Cane Break 200 mile near Atlanta, Georgia. The best thing, the coolest thing about this race is that the winner of the race was a woman, Brooke Jones. You don't see that too often. It does happen from time to time. It turns out that women sometimes are better at the longer distance races than the men. So very cool to see him finish third overall and second as the second top male in that race. And so as I was remembering that conversation, I kind of felt like for myself, I wanted to listen to it again because it's been so long. And I remember that conversation so vividly that I had with him. So what I'm doing is unearthing this episode and bringing it back to the top of this podcast feed so that for those of you, unless you've been listening to the show for the last 7 years, you likely have missed this episode because it was way back in 2017 as episode 31. So we're going to spin this up. We're going to have you listen to this episode from 2017. There might be some references in there that are going to feel a little old and bring back some days of nostalgia from 2017 for you. The lessons that he shares, both on the personal side as well as the professional side, I think are exactly the kinds of lessons that fall in line with our series here on the Go Farther podcast series, helping you to do more, be happy, and surprise yourself. So without any further ado, let me share that conversation in 2017 I had with Dan Waldschmidt. Hey everyone, this is Scott Sambucci, and you are listening to the Startup Selling Podcast, Talking Sales with Scott Sambucci. That's me. Today I have a guest named Dan Waldschmidt. And Dan is a little bit different from a lot of the guests that I've had on recently. A lot of the folks that I've talked to recently here on the podcast have either been startup CEOs, people growing companies, people that have been focused on sales. And while Dan has done a lot of work in the sales channel, Dan has also worked as a business strategist. He's a motivational speaker. He's written a 9-time best-selling book called Edgy Conversations, How Ordinary People Achieve Outrageous Success. He's been interviewed all over the world in places like ABC, Entrepreneur Magazine, Fox News, Dow Jones, Forbes, Inc., you name it, Vanity Fair. He's been in those media channels. The reason that I had Dan on this podcast is because of his very unique approach. As you'll hear in just a couple of minutes, Dan is full of fire. He takes a very direct approach. He is very edgy in himself, and he's going to challenge you. He's going to challenge your assumptions about how you think you're running your business, how you should run your business, how you're thinking about yourself, and how you achieve what he calls achieving awesomeness. He asks this question, what is your box of awesome? And so we're going to go through the entire framework that he introduces in his book, Edgy Conversations, and how that specifically applies to you and your company and achieving all of the things that you want to achieve in your life, in your company, in your relationships. So without any further ado, I'm going to hand us over to my conversation with Dan Waldschmidt. Dan.
Breckenzy. What's going on, man?
How are you? Ready to do this?
Fan-fucking-tastic. Yeah, man. Born ready to do this.
I know, I can tell. I've been watching the videos and reading your blog and read your book. So I just want to dive right in. I want to do a quick introduction because I think it's important to set the stage for the folks that are listening to this. Most of the listeners of this podcast are startup entrepreneurs, people who work in the technology world, salespeople. And So for those of you who don't know Dan Waldschmidt, that's the other voice on the line. Dan is a 9-time bestseller. His book is called Edgy Conversations: How Ordinary People Achieve Outrageous Success. He's a motivational speaker. He's a business strategist. He works with billion-dollar companies over 14 countries. And on the sales side of things, he's presented at events and been interviewed by Selling, Power Magazine, Driving Sales News. He's presented at the Sales 2.0 Leadership Conference in Philadelphia, among other places. And for me, on a personal level, Dan, one of the things I'm most interested about, despite all the business success and personal success, is the ultra running that you do as an endurance event junkie. So what I want to do is, in this conversation, I want to talk about the work that you do and your framework of Edgy Conversations, and specifically how it applies, how you feel like it could apply to the entrepreneur that's in Silicon Valley, that's building a technology company or building any kind of company, frankly, and understanding how they can apply some of this framework to the work that they're doing. Because they're already, in many cases, a high performer, and what they're trying to do is figure out how to become the 1% of the 1%. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Cool.
Yep. That's essentially what I'm all about.
So, I've read the book, and I want to get into some of the details about that in just a minute or two. So the acronym EDGY, EDGY, Extreme Discipline, Giving, and Human Factor. Can you take a minute or two, just describe that to somebody who's never heard it before, and how you arrived at that particular framework?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's the cornerstone now of kind of everything that we do. For us, it's the result of 4 years of about 1,000+ interview stories, research with multiple neuroscientists on our team. We were really looking for what, as you said, what's the 1%? What makes some people rise to the occasion while others, no matter how much is given to them, they just seem to underperform. And if you've ever been on a sales team or even a tech team, I've launched multiple tech products, and it's crazy. On paper, this shit should work. It should work, right? You do this, you do this, you do this. It's multiplication. And instead, you're only getting addition. You're thinking, what is wrong? What is wrong? And so I set out to say, okay, across business, math, sports, science, politics, not just derivative to something like sports, but what really makes some people uber successful and everyone else flailing? And that's the formula we realized, is that these people are extreme, they're disciplined, they give lots of value, and they're human. And you combine it together, and it's a winning formula to kind of take whatever you're doing to the next level.
So and I want to kind of break each of these four out: the extreme discipline, the giving value, and human factor, and dive into those in a little bit more detail. That'd be all right?
Oh yeah.
So the first, and in a lot of ways, I was reading the book, reading your blog, and thinking about this framework. I'm thinking to myself, like, okay, if I'm reading this, I'm already, and a lot of times I might already think I'm extreme, right? If I'm the kind of person that's looking for help, or I'm looking for ways to further myself, in some contexts, it's sort of a self-selecting bias, right? Or if I'm an entrepreneur, I've decided to start a startup, or start a technology company. Most people would say, people around me, my family, my friends, colleagues, would say, dude, you're crazy. Like, why are you going to go do this? You're going to give up the office job, you're going to give up the salary, you're going to take all this risk. So I'm already being extreme. And I suspect, though, in a lot of cases, you would look at that person and go, you're not extreme enough. So how do I know
that's
if
exactly
I'm being
right.
extreme enough?
Well, so take whatever you think is extreme, multiply it times 2, and then multiply it times 4, right? I mean, and I'm being somewhat silly. It's just, we're not extreme. Look, I talk to entrepreneurs like, oh, I'm going to have my entrepreneurial vision. Okay, you be Henry Ford and go bankrupt 5 times. We'll see how dedicated you are towards your dream. That's extreme. Well, I think we compare ourselves. You made a brilliant point, Scott. We compare ourselves to people who are less extreme, and then by that measurement, we're some magically extreme people. But the measurement's off. It's not a good measurement. I mean, so I think how you measure this ability to be extreme, and this is really the key, because it's kind of like you're making, a good cake, and you have 4 out of 5 ingredients right, but instead of sugar, you put salt in, right? I mean, that's going to be a nasty cake. So it doesn't matter what else is in there. It's nasty, and that's where most people find themselves. They go, oh, I'm doing these things, I'm doing, all of the, I've got SDRs and BDRs and got this process to launch the technology to get MRR and ARR to the right level and do all this stuff, but it's not working. And it's probably because you haven't doubled down, tripled down, quadrupled down on that thing that is extreme. And so I tell people, what is it that is the absolute most crazy thing that you could do? Start a conversation like that. Yeah. So, for example, what if you were a company that did $40 billion a year and had 50,000 employees? Real story, happened a couple of years ago with one of my clients. We said, we're not going to do meetings anymore. One of the largest insurance companies in the world, we will not have meetings. That's pretty extreme, right? Because your whole life, if you're a senior executive, is running from meeting to goddamn meeting to goddamn meeting. And you never have time to create, and you never have time to be awesome. It's sitting in a stupid meeting where someone justifies why they're mediocre and you should be satisfied with it. We said, well, what if we threw that shit out the window and said, we're not going to have meetings? And secondly, we're going to be awesome. And I know that's unquantifiable at the time, but we're all going to feel it and taste it and smell it, experience it once it happens. So that's our goal. We're going to be awesome. And what happened is over a year and a half, we added $20 billion to the top line. Okay? $20 billion to the top line. And at the same time, had people growing and expanding and doing things that people never thought possible, all because we took something that was outrageous. I mean, I was in a meeting when I suggested we do this, and the general counsel of the company rolled his eyes, basically spit out his gum at me. That's ridiculous. It'll never work. Well, a year and a half later, it's working. Now, you could copy my idea right now. Those of you listening, you may go, oh, we're not going to have meetings. It's not about the fucking meeting. It's not about the meeting. It's about that attitude that says we don't tolerate mediocrity. It is a poison. We kill it. We squash it. If we're good, we don't care. We want to be great. If we're good, it doesn't matter. We want to be awesome. If we're awesome already, we want to be uber awesome, excellent, whatever the next thing is. It's next level gamesmanship. And so where people get stuck is they find themselves in a transactional problem and institute a strategy that is soul-sucking, defeating. Hence this. I'm a startup. I'm running out of money. I do something that's really stupid and short-sighted in order to try to make money now. I give up on my dream. I give up on my passion. I'm not as extreme so that I can make a little more money now. And what ends up happening is they crush their long-term vision, which you see it all the time. Someone sends out 900 emails in a row. I bought SalesLoft. I bought Salesforce. I'm going to drip market message you, text message, bother, all this crap. I'm going to send this to you and then wonder why you don't give a shit about my dream. I don't give a shit about your dream because you're an asshole. You don't know how to market. You don't know how to sell. If you would take the time to slow down, to plan, to do it right, to make love to me, right, as a consumer, to really make sure I know that you care and you're delivering healing and helping to me, guess what? I'd be your customer for life. And there are plenty of examples where great startups that I now do business with in different areas of my life have done it right, where they've nurtured that relationship and they've taken a long view of success. And these are areas where we get sideways, either because an investor wants quick results or leadership is short-sighted, and we fail to accomplish awesomeness because we want this quarter to be good.
So this is awesome. And so I'm this entrepreneur, whether I'm running a $50 billion company or a 5-person team, right? So now I'm sitting there and going, I have to do something extreme. And I've got these thoughts in my mind, and there's these things I want to do, or I say to myself, I should do this, we should do that, we should. But if I do that, I'm going to be alone. Or like, how do you deal with that doubt?
Hey, listen, there's only one fucking Leonidas. One. There's one Leonidas in history, right? There's probably more of them, but there's one Leonidas. And there's only 300, one group of 300. Why? Because they were the ones who stood up and said, we're going to do this. And throughout time, whether it's Robert Perry, who, you want to read an inspiring story? Here's a guy who tried to conquer the North Pole, and he went and he failed. And he went again and he failed. He went again and he failed. And he did 3 times and 4 times and 5 times and 6 times. In the middle of nowhere with no modern technology, did it, and it was the 7th time before he finally ended up being successful. And most of us, something goes sideways once or twice and we decide, look at the data. It's showing me that there's no relevant marketplace, right? And it's the level of ridiculousness that we tolerate. Now, if you're a leader, here's how you achieve extreme. Here's how you achieve awesome. Because I think some people get scared away when you say extreme behavior.
Yeah.
But it's about awesome. It's about awesome.
Yep.
Here's how you achieve that. You don't tolerate anything else. Small thing. I'm a CEO. I've started and built several companies. When one of my last companies was a real estate company. I know nothing about real estate, but I realized one simple thing in 2008, 2009, there were all these agents sitting on their couch. They knew how to sell homes, but they were just like, I'm not motivated, right? No. Their idea was no one's selling anything. No one's buying anything. So I'm going to sit on my couch. I said, what if I could throw some money at this, give you some coaching training? I've spent $400,000 or $500,000 over a couple of years and built a $50 million company nurturing the hell out of people. Our average agent who joined us increased their sales by 400% the first year it joined us. How? I'm an idiot when it comes to selling homes. I'm an idiot. How did I do it? I did one simple thing. We only expect awesome. I will give you your business cards. I will give you signs for the yard. I will give you lock boxes at $99 a piece to put on doors. But if you join my team, you will sign in blood. Almost like the Scientology billion-year agreement, right? It's not that, but something slightly different and perhaps less deadly. That says you are committed to awesomeness. And if you join me, I don't care if you have kids. I don't care if you have no kids. I don't care if this is the only thing you do or if it's a part-time thing you do. You're committed to awesome. And that was an attitude and a feeling and a commitment that it swept through the small little startup bunch of nobodies who turned nothing into $50 million in a couple of years. And I think that's an attitude that's not just me, but it's leaders all over the country who are testimonials to awesome. It's Zappos saying, we're going to provide great customer care. It's Southwest. We forget Southwest lost money for 18 straight quarters. I mean, how do you stay losing? That's a lot of months. That's a lot of days where you have to look investors in the eye and say, we want awesome. We want a better caliber of people. And since Southwest turned a profit, they've never turned back. Take REI for an example. REI was just a nobody, just an outdoors company selling, recreational equipment for people wanting to climb mountains and run long races. They're nobody, but now they're $2.3 billion in revenue with 120 stores. Why? You know what they told their employees? If you want to go on an adventure, we will give you the gear to go do it. They hired people who wanted to do awesome things. They brought those people in and said, not only do we want awesome people, but we will give you more money to go be awesome. It's no wonder that when you walk inside an REI store and you're looking at a tent going, I wonder if this tent works. That guy's like, look at my badge, dude. I've been to Montana and climbed 75 peaks. Like, I've got a beard and I'm nerdy. But I'll tell you why, because I just fucking did that thing that you're dreaming about. It's infectious. And that's where we lose track. We run from meeting to meeting, tactical thing to tactical thing, trying to impress people instead of saying, listen, I don't have time for bullshit. I'm in the business of being awesome. So if it's not awesome, it's now my enemy. And I'm going to run through it. I'm going to destroy it. I'm going to make sure it doesn't last because we're committed to awesome. For years as a consultant to big billion-dollar companies, I mean, guys, Oracle, Aetna, Microsoft, I mean, name them, a bunch of big guys and a bunch of small guys that no one's heard of, but that's okay. They wouldn't be as memorable on a conversation like this, where I got a call from the president of one of these big companies, really big companies, and she said, we've got a problem. And I thought, oh shit, that's never a good call. She said, so we've been paying you, and I guess it's a little over $1 million this year, and we don't have any agreement with you. And the CFO was trying to make sure you're legit. See, we accidentally got ourselves into trouble in this case, and we ironed it out. She's the president of the company. She can make this go away with a phone call. We have two rules. Be incredibly easy to do business with, number one. Two, be so awesome people ask for more. So I tell people, we don't do proposals. We just don't do them. They're a waste of my time. If you want to hire me, hire me. We don't do contracts. Guess what? I'm going to tell you up front what I'm going to charge you. If you don't pay me, I'm probably going to get the hint and stop working for you, right? That's just how it is. If you want to increase or decrease, or you feel like you're not getting your money's worth, guess what? Tell me to go away. We've got a 200% money back guarantee on multi-million-dollar contracts. Why? Because I'm in the fucking business of being awesome. And if you can beat me at my game or I'm full of shit, I dare you to challenge me. Because that's just the game we play, and it's not talk. It's waking up every morning and saying, if it's not awesome, we don't fucking do it. And guess what? I'm a college dropout twice. You can listen to me on the phone. I'm basically misstating words and all kinds of Trumptonian English, right? But I'll tell you, the thing that drives me is a mission and a purpose and a calling of helping people who want to be awesome achieve it. And so that's what we do. And anything else just has to go away. It can no longer stand in our way.
So Dan, I'm sitting here and I'm saying, okay, I want to be awesome. What's the very first thing I should do to like either examine where I need to be awesome first or take that first step? Because like talking about working as, $1 million consultant for Oracle sounds good. I'm just trying to get through my, $15,000 burn rate right now with my
Mhm.
3 developers trying to get the first product out. What's the first thing that I would do if I was a startup CEO or on a startup team and saying, okay, I want to be awesome. I want to have those things. I need a practical first 3 steps. What are those first 3 steps that you would tell somebody?
Enter the dojo of Dan. Dun, dun, dun. I think someone needs you have a chime there. You can clang, ching. So just before I got on this call with you, I did something that I do every day. I meditate.
Yep.
I took 15 minutes, and that was all the time I had in between meetings and things like that. And I sat literally all my meetings. I looked around, I was like, damn it, damn it, damn it, damn it, damn it. All the meetings are booked. I went in. We have a bunch of showers and stuff here, so people can go running and do whatever they need to do, a full gym and all that stuff. I went into one of the shower stalls, turned the light off, and sat on the floor and meditated for 15 minutes. And then now I'm coming to talk to you with clarity. We don't take enough time to clear our minds and think. And so I would say number one thing you need to do is find a quiet moment, undisturbed by wonderful kids and spouses and team members, and sit down and think about what you want. And here's where the challenge is: not what you're willing to even write down on paper, but there's that scary, awesome thing that you've been thinking about.
Yeah.
That's so nutty that you're not even sure, like, can I put this shit on paper? I don't even know that I want this out of my head because it's so crazy. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, it's almost like if I let the dragon out, who knows? Can I put him back in, or what if people make fun of it? And that's the thing. That's the thing. It's the thing. It's the first time I remember I said I wanted to run a race, and I signed up for a 120-mile race. I hadn't run anything but a half marathon. I said, I want to run this 24-hour race. I want to break the world record. That's one of my missions in long distance running, is to break the world record for most miles run in 24 hours, 180 miles.
Okay.
But taking time to really get a grasp of what drives us. And that's also, by the way, something you need to take time to think about every day of your life, right? Once you've cultivated that idea, it's now fertilizing that idea so it has room to grow and expand. Look, you just, side note, you won't be successful or achieve your 1% of 1% if you're not obsessive. It's not about wanting it. It's about doing whatever it takes. And sometimes doing what it takes is doing without a bunch of stuff, right? Doing without fame, doing without glory, doing without early success, keeping trying. That's number one. Number two, once you sit down and figure out what that thing is, what you truly want. And by the way, it better be a mission or a calling or a purpose. It can't just be, I want an app that does blah, blah, blah. Because those sort of things, some of them are successful, but it's very, very hit or miss. The second thing is then deciding in your mind as you think about this, looking at the resources you have, your unique situation. By the way, this is why I poo-poo a lot of all these get-rich-quick bullshit on the internet. Someone says, oh, Gary Vee said this. That's great. Gary Vee's awesome. I love Gary. But just because he said you should do it doesn't mean it's going to work for you. It works for him. It might work for 3 other companies. It's not going to work for you. Look at the resources you have. Is it money? Is it time? Is it experience? Is it all the above? Is it like half of each of those? Look at those specific things that you have, the resource you have, and ask yourself, using these resources, what is the best way to make progress towards where I need to be? Now, for me, if I have more money than I have time, I might hire someone to help me. If I have not enough money and barely enough time, I might decide I'm going to do some of these things for myself, right? And pursuing process. You might put together a process that then you hand off to someone in Upwork to go do for you at $3 or $4 an hour. Of course, some of that's the 4-hour work week model. It's really not a 4-hour work week, as we all know, but it is about scalability. So you might take those. I think this is really neat. Now, you can't do this unless you've got your passion and purpose already written down, very clear for you. You just can't. But once you have it down, then you can begin to start building out this process that says, okay, here's all the resources we have. Here's these goals that I want to do. Now, something happens almost intangibly because of that. Because you know what your higher calling, your purpose is. You're like Joan of motherfucking Arc, right? You've got a purpose. Now, and you've got your resources, you can then go to people and have an intelligent discussion. I can't tell you the number of times, Scott, someone calls me and says, hey, what can you do for me? I don't even, who are you? What do you want? I mean, what do you think I have a magic wand? Is this like Harry Potter? Like, what do you need? What do you want? But when someone comes to me and says, Dan, I know you're well connected to XYZ person. Here's what I'm doing. And I'm deeply passionate about this. And if you feel like my passion is worthy of an introduction, could you help me connect me to this person? Or could you help me with this? Or could you take a look at my business model? Scott, I've got my fucking cell phone number on my website. I'm like, call me if you've got a problem. Few people are willing and are prepared enough to just reach out. Look, I reached out to Seth Godin more than a decade ago, and he took my call. We did a video series together. How crazy is that, right? Out of nowhere, when he was, there are people, Keith Ferrazzi had never eaten lunch alone. I mean, there are these magnanimous people that will help you, will guide you. But you have to know what you want. You have to know where you need to be. You need to know how to ask for help so that people like me and others can actually help you. And this is the problem.
So
people think because they have an idea that's worthy of our time, and it's not. Everyone's got an idea.
So this is really good. So number one is get really clear about what you want. Number two, figure out your resources. What would be the third step for somebody?
Third step is then reaching out to those key people who can help you. I look at it as, if I were to look at it in a four-step process, I would say that strategy, process, tools, and connection. The strategy. What is that edgy, extreme thing you can do? Look, what's the process? Look, how do you break that down into bite-sized chunks so you can achieve that level of greatness, right? What are things you should be doing every day? Number four, what are tools to help you scale? Well, that's the beautiful part about where we're at today is you don't need to have, a $25 billion, Cybele database, right? Integration. You can go and buy Salesforce for $20, or you can buy clothes for $13 and have a kick-ass sort of CRM. And then connections. This is the last piece. It's sitting down and going, who can help me exponentially grow? Strategy, processes, tools, that's all addition. Connections, that's multiplication. But you can't get there until you have a sound strategy. Some people call it an elevator pitch. It's more than an elevator pitch. If you can say your life mission in an elevator, then your mission is too small. It's just too small. And so you have to have a calling and a purpose and this infectious enthusiasm to get to where you want to be at all costs. And you have to have a process. On Monday, we're going to do this. On Tuesday, we're going to do this. One of my ideas, and this sounds crazy, we use Todoist a lot, but now we use Flow. Getflow.com, by the way, they don't pay me. I just love what they do. But one of my tasks to do every day is to look back at my calendar from the previous day and send a note to everybody that I spoke with the previous day, which means I always follow up on my meetings, on my calls every single day. And it also means people get the pattern that if you reach to me and have something legitimate, I'm going to reach back to you. And guess what? I will follow up and follow through on whatever I promised to do. And it just creates a better track record. There's smart tools. Yeah.
Why? Sorry to interrupt. Like, why are people so scared to just do this? I mean, it's a simple framework, and it's like the one piece that people seem the most afraid of, whether it's asking for help or just making sales calls. Why are people so afraid to just pick up the phone and talk to somebody else about what they're doing, what their company does, how it solves the client's problems? What is it about that in your experience that makes it so hard for people? Like, I'm clear on my mission. I know exactly what I want to do. I know what my resources are. I know what my strategy is. I know who I should be contacting to get this help, or I know who I should be contacting to sell. But that's the last step to me. Oftentimes, people are just afraid to do it. They hide behind email, or they hope that somehow they'll run into somebody at a conference. Like, why don't people take that step?
Because we're always looking for easy. And look, you're an entrepreneur. You're already beaten down. You're already broken, right? And I come to you and say, I've got one thing that can help you. Perhaps exponentially, you're going to have to trust me on this, perhaps exponentially, but you're going to have to go, in spite of getting beaten down and broken, you're going to have to work even harder. It's like me going to the track, and my coach says to me, I've trained for ultras, I've run some of the most incredible races in the world, I'm now honing all of my whatever talent you can call it, or craziness, into running as fast of a marathon as I can. I'm trying to get down to like 220 something.
Okay.
240 something for sake of reference. So I've got to drop about 20 minutes off. Which 20 minutes doesn't sound a lot until you're already good, right?
No, it's a big marginal difference.
Yeah, getting great is incredible. So I go to the track, and my coach says to me, "I want you to run 40 laps at 100-meter pace of 20 seconds. Basically, that's running a sub 4:45-minute mile on pace. Then around the curvy part of the track, just light jog. When you hit the back stretch, I want you to sprint the last 100 meters. And the same thing, do that 40 laps in a row. Exactly.
Yeah.
And you get to that and you realize it's intense. But you know what's crazy? I finished this workout last week and I told my coach I got done 40 more. And she laughed and I said, "Want me to? All you have to do is bet me and I'm going to do it just to prove you wrong." The reality was, here was the thing. And I finished my last 2 laps at 14 and 15 seconds for 100 meter, which, the Olympics, they're running it from 9s and 10s. So 14's nothing. But after you've done 40 of those things, it's pretty fucking awesome, at least for myself. But here's the thing. I broke it down into tiny chunks. That's how I dealt with the pain. That's how I rationalized pushing myself further and faster than felt comfortable, because I just chunked it down into tiny pieces. Now, that's the same way. For instance, on my calendar, it says, I have a list of VIP people. I call one of them every single day. I have a note. I have a task to send one handwritten note every day. It's just, talk about that strategy process. That process, part of my process is to send one handwritten note a day. Now, I'll tell you, I have a secret. I use a product called Bond, B-O-N-D, bond.co. And guess what? I write a beautiful handwritten note. They send it for me, right? I type it up. They send it for me. It helps me scale, but still be extremely personal. So, it's hard. The simple answer was just that it's hard to do these things. And so we will rationalize every other possible option than just doing what's hard. But here's what I'll tell you, Scott. And I'm 38, so I haven't seen it all. But I've had businesses since I was 19 years old, so I guess that counts for a small something. Every single time I've pursued quick or easy, I've gotten screwed. And I'm saying I've gotten screwed as if that's passive voice. I fucked up. Let's just be active about it. I made a mistake. I almost always now go into the hard thing. You know why? Here's my secret. I'm tougher than most people. Look, I'm telling you, I'm going to do the hard thing, because guess what? If the hard thing is what's successful, I'm gambling on the fact that you're going to quit before I do. That's why I run 100-mile races and not a 100-meter dash or 200-meter dash. You're going to crush me. You're going to keep crushing me. But at a certain point, you're going to need a goddamn drink of water, and I'm going to say bye to your sorry ass. It's just how it is, right? Because I'm not going to break. And if that means me putting my body into a very uncomfortable situation, I'm willing to do that for my mission, for my purpose. And what happens is, very, very smart people use really dumb excuses to rationalize quitting. And they'll say, "Oh, we haven't seen the results yet." Hey, guess what, numbnuts? Sales is a trailing indicator. Sales is not the beginning indicator. It's a trailing indicator. User engagement. Those are all trailing indicators, which means if you're figuring out something in sales or engagement that's a problem, guess what? You're not going to fix that for months to come. There's just no easy way to fix some of these things. So what are we doing now? It's that extreme behavior and that process of discipline that drives the results we want down the road. Look, I'm sending cards to people. Often someone says, "Dan Waldschmidt, I really appreciate your handwritten notes." Nobody, except I bump into them at a conference or something. They go, "Look, dude, it meant a lot to me. Let me tell you what I was. I was in a hospital room. I got your card." Or I had a really shitty day and someone sent me, gave me your handwritten note. And they'll say, "I didn't ever respond back to you, but I had meaning and purpose." Did I do anything at that moment? No. It was things that I had been doing, investing into that relationship months and perhaps years before that. And so that's the dirty little secret about sales and about entrepreneurship, is that the things we do now pay dividends later. And so, you can't look at your situation and say, "Oh, look at what just happened," and then try to draw a straight line to what you did the previous day. That's ridiculous.
Yeah,
exactly.
So this is interesting. So, because what we've done here, we talked about the extreme and being awesome, and then by virtue of that, we just talked about the discipline. So the last 2 pieces of the edgy and acronym, the giving and the human factor, that's what we're talking about here. It's like, how do you give value to people, and how do you be more human? And I was watching the interview that you did with Driving Sales, and you talked about a car dealership and how they're tracking the wrong metrics. And this is what you're just discussing here. which is like if you're tracking how quickly, you shake somebody's hand when they walk into a dealership, okay, that feels human, but it's not really human, right? And you
Right.
ask the question,
That's
what are
right.
the things that you're doing? Like looking at yourself and saying, what are the things that I'm doing right now that are sloppy or don't connect with customers? That's a place to clean up and look at how do I become more human. So again, I'm just going to ask you advice. So I'm sitting here running my company. How do I know if I'm giving enough? And how do I know if I'm doing that without expectations?
If you have not yet followed the show, please follow the show. Please leave a review and please get the word out. Every week we do check the downloads, we check the number of people who listen, we check, we look at those metrics. And the reason we look at those metrics is because we want to know that the impact that we're making here on this podcast is real. It's important to me to know that if I'm investing this time and getting this word out, that the word is getting out to as many people as possible, people that might want to hear this message, people that might benefit from this. And so if you've got a friend, a co-founder, a partner, anybody that you feel like could benefit from this series or the other podcasts that we've done over the years, please do send them a text, share the show, send an email and say, hey, check out this episode, check out this show, follow the show, listen to a few episodes. I know that there's always heavy competition for people's podcast playlists, especially now with so many podcasts out there. But I know for me, as I listen to different podcasts, I go through ebbs and flows where I might listen to a podcast really consistently for 6, 7, 8 months, maybe longer. And then it kind of gets a little stale and I'm looking for something new. Or there's certain days where I'm like, I usually listen to this podcast when I'm listening to the dog walk, but I'm not feeling that podcast today. I'm looking for something new. And this is a chance for you to share this so that can pop up in their show playlist and maybe say to themselves like, hey, I'm going to give this show, the Startup Selling Show and this podcast series on Go Farther. I'm going to give this a shot today. And the only way they're going to know about that, the only way your friend, your co-founder, your partner, your spouse, whoever is going to know about the show is if you share it. So word of mouth is the best way still to get podcasts out to more people. And by word of mouth, that means your mouth or your text or your email. So please, please, please take a moment, share this episode, leave us a review, and please follow the show if you're not already doing it.
So I think giving, you're giving when it costs you something. Literally, when you feel the pain, that means you're giving. That's almost by definition. I like to say it like this: give so much value it no longer makes sense. To everybody around you, they're like, "That is nuts." Simple things.
So let's say that I want to repeat that. Give so much value that it doesn't make sense.
Yep, that it no longer makes sense.
No longer.
Give so much value it no longer makes sense. Right? I mean, that's when you know you've hit peak, Pied Piper magic. You know what I mean? I mean, like, when you're looking around, and going, wow, this hurts, it's meaningful. So a couple things, I'll just give you some experience. One, worked with one of the biggest companies in the world who just announced their version of the Chromebook today. And one of the things that I realized, again, their metric was how quickly can we answer support tickets? Well, if I'm very deadly in technology, but I'm not a developer. Just been around it, done it, built several companies, but I'm not a developer. So I know enough to be dangerous, but not enough to ever write any app or be useful at all. So I said to this company, I bet you that people are exiting your support queue who don't have all their questions answered. You don't understand. Here's what rational people say. Well, if they had a question, they would ask us, right? The extreme person says, no, they wouldn't. They wouldn't because they're embarrassed because they know they're an idiot. And so they're going to just put their head down and slink off in the corner. But if you were to reach a hand out to them and say, could I help you? What can I help you with? They're going to come back to you. And they're not just going to come back to you, but that value you give them is going to result in them spending more money with you. But again, they're like, well, where is the data, Scott? Do you have a spreadsheet of data to show me this? I'm like, no, just shut up and let's try something. What we did was every time someone closed a support ticket, we would send an email, and this was started off a very small group and then grew to be a very large group. But for the small group, it was said, hey, shucks, Scott, we closed out your ticket, but I got to tell you, I'm thinking you've got another question. And then here was what can we help you with? So I didn't say, can I help you? I said, what can I help you with? I'm forcing you to tell me that I've answered all your questions. My assumption is I haven't. And the only way to get it out of you is to force you to respond back to me. 78% of the people we sent that email to responded. 78%. They had another question. They had another concern. And of those 78, more than 50% had a problem that could only be solved by spending money. Maybe they had 3 office licenses and they need 7, and that's why it wasn't working. Or maybe they had this product, but they needed the other product, right? And they needed to spend money, and that turned into $300 million in revenue for a really, really, really big company out of nowhere. A brand new $300 million line of business. Why? Because we gave lots of value. Where someone said, well, Dan, look in the data. I don't see anybody on, Bugzilla or Problemzilla and giving us any problems. They would have filled out a support ticket, right? I don't see any of that. And instead, we said, no, that's a bit human. It's also a bit about giving value. Now, personally, talking about giving, I'm not a fan of distributing digital goods. Just not. Now,
what describe digital goods? Can you define that for people?
Well, HubSpot created this fantasy world where they said if you dangle enough infographics and charts and PowerPoints and downloads, these are all digital goods, PDFs, white papers, case studies, other bullshit like this, then people are going to magically want to buy your product, and you're going to keep dripping this goodness on them, and over time they're going to come inbound and they're going to make lots of money. And I have to tell you, this is perhaps the world's biggest pipe dream. If you raise $80 or $90 million and can hire 300 people to create good content, maybe. But if you're like every other startup in the world, that'll never work for you. By the way, it's the worst idea in the world. I'm not a fan of inbound marketing at all. It's basically, unless you're in very tiny niches, a crock of shit. If you're listening to me right now and you're using inbound marketing, stop. Go outbound. Okay, stop. That me telling you this will make you billions of dollars. Okay, so stop and go do something. Okay, but so we have this culture now of like, go get my PDF, man. I gave you my PDF, and the PDF is crap and it's half-assed. And the intention is not to transform your world; it's to inform your world. And it's not even good information. I can Google better information than I get on some of these PDFs. It looks shitty. It's uninspiring in every way. So here's what I mean by giving value. When I launched my book in 2014, I thought, how can I make a meaningful impact? So I went to a company, the company that the UFC uses to make their custom gloves and different things like that, knee pads, shin pads, things like that, and had brown vintage leather boxing gloves made. One of the famous stories I tell in my book is the Cinderella Man, the Russell Crowe, was starred in the movie. But those were one of the stories. I thought this is a hallmark of the book, boxing glove, and I had these custom made 125 gloves, about $200 a piece. On the strap handle, it said "Stay Edgy, Be Awesome." I mean, like, it was good shit. Had them shipped back here, had all kinds of problems getting them through customs, but got them. I then sent a box of awesome. We then had custom packaging made up, these big bright red boxes that had our logo fist on them, and it said "Stay Edgy, Be Awesome, welcome to the empire of awesomeness." I mean, it was just all kinds of cool branding. Put these boxing gloves in with the book and some other stuff, bracelets, right, that say "fuck excuses, be awesome." I mean, just kind of like edgy stuff. We put it in the box. I wrote handwritten notes, by the way, for all you people sending me your books, with a typed out letter from your publisher. Go fuck yourself. I'm probably never going to read about your book, right? Because that's such an insult. Back on topic. So I put together these boxes of awesome. Hand wrote a note for every single person, specific to them. John Jantz, boom. Seth Godin, boom. Each person, different message, specific to them, boom. Here's exactly here's what I've appreciated about you, and I sent it off. I didn't ask one person to tweet, share, blog, video, leave a review, anything like that. None of that at all. The book launched in January of 2004, or April, or it was going to launch in February of 2014. It got pushed off to April because by the second week in February, my website had been hit 30 million times. 30 million, check that shit out, 30 million. An article I wrote called "You Have to Do the Hard Things" got millions and millions of views on on Business Insider, got picked up by Yahoo and Vanity Fair and Forbes and all these different people. And, at the same time, all of these gurus were like, half of them were like, does anyone know who this Dan Waldschmidt guy is? The other half were like, where have you been? What is all this goodness? Tweeting pictures of themselves holding the boxing gloves and doing all this stuff. For a while, I had all the pictures up on our site, and then I took them down because it just got too much. And all of a sudden in April, people were like, I actually read this book. It's amazing. And we sold 14,000 copies the first month and went on to sell 300 some odd thousand copies, went on to be the #1 business book in Russia, won 8 or 9 awards, everything from design to content and in between. Okay, what's the point? Is that I had to spend, talk about giving, to give that box. I had to spend thousands of dollars to put all that together, and take the time to write handwritten notes, personal to each specific person. And I had to, take just simple time, find their ad, all of the time and effort. But that giving, that sense of giving. And by the way, here's another thing. Some of those experts never did anything. Never did anything. They didn't write about me. They didn't tweet about me. They didn't blog about me. They didn't even get back to me and say, we got your goddamn package. None of them. Some of them didn't, right? Nothing. I got nothing. But enough of them said, oh, we've never seen something like this before. Some of them had books of their own so they could appreciate, where the point I was in my career. And it went from a book that my publishing company created, Hydra, to a book that was #2 on the best-selling list when Tony Robbins' new book on money came out. It went from #1 to #2. Why? Because I was willing to give lots of value to those people. And again, this is not bragging about me. This is something anyone can do.
Yeah, this is the first of all, it's extreme. Second of all, you were disciplined enough to go through and find all those people and send that out. You gave without expectations, and it was human because it was a handwritten note that said, hey, Seth, you did this for me, or whoever else was on that list. I was imagining myself, I've got a book coming out this year. I mean, I just all of a sudden rattled off a list of people that I could send a personal note to and say, like, listen, that podcast interview you did with that person, this affected me this way.
Yeah,
or this helped my relationship with my wife because the way that you talked about, handling disagreements. I mean, those are but it takes a ton of discipline. It takes a ton of work. It's super extreme. What would you say to somebody who doesn't have the thousands of dollars to invest in boxing gloves? Like, what's something you could do that would be, have you ever seen something that's like really low budget, but still high impact, high value?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me tell you something that's awesome. That I have a buddy of mine who's in a big company, his division's about $2 billion. And this guy's awesome. He's like an old timer who's just got the spirit of a young man. I love it. But he will read great books. He'll see someone, he'll find a book, he'll highlight a bunch of sections out of the book, send it to them as like little Post-it notes in the book. I love that.
Oh, nice.
Thinking about you, highlight certain sections of the book and sends it on. I'm like, yes. And so for me, he actually called me and I said, what do you need? I sent him $50 for free. I said, look, because he said, I love it. Your book it's like my favorite right now. I'm sure I'm going to find another book that's better, but right now this is my favorite.
Right.
So he was sending it out to different people. And I thought that he just blew me away with this idea of I'm prospecting for business. He's in Atlanta region, so he's going after, headquarters of Coca-Cola. He's going after Delta. He's going after, some massive companies right in the middle, Time Warner, that are right in the middle of Atlanta. But the way he's doing it to get their attention is, hey, Mr. Executive, I highlighted some things, thought this might be interesting with one of those little sticky notes, like when you sign a contract that, that points to where you need to sign it. Take a look. And someone would flip through a book that was personalized just for them. A couple paragraphs here, a couple paragraphs there. If they did nothing else, he gave them a couple, spark notes specific to help them with their business.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a $10 investment in the book, and then $5 to ship it off. And
yeah, exactly.
For $15, you get, ultimately, a big impact. Maybe not as big as sending somebody custom boxing gloves, but on a marginal, the amount of effort that it takes.
Yeah. What about just sending an awesome email? What about, okay, let's scale it back. What about, and by the way, so another thing, I love this. When I was going after speaker bureaus, what I would do was I went after 200 of them, repeating a very similar process, sending them a box of awesome, letting them know that I existed and that I was passionate. Here's pictures of my video and here's a brochure and all this kind of stuff. And what I would do is, because I thought it was tired and played out that I had a book, I ripped out pages of my book, literally. And I took a Sharpie, a red Sharpie, because my book is glossy paper. I don't know if you read the ebook, it's uninspiring, but if you get the actual book, it's got a beautiful rubber cover, and each page is color, and it's hand illustrated. And so I would rip out a page as close to the edge as I could, and then write sideways on it a handwritten note to these people, and then put it inside an envelope. So when they opened it up, it was almost like I had scribbled on a piece of paper, but it was my book underneath. And that cost me, I mean, how many pages in my book? 170, 180, 200 pages in my book. I ripped off most of them, and I can send 100 notes for the cost of one book. But it's basically the same as using scratch paper around your house, except it's a little more elegant, right? It's interesting. It's extreme. It's edgy. That sort of thing. Cost me what? Pennies for envelopes? That's it.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So my wife, for example, she's a private pilot, and so she has to buy these charts all the time to tell you where to fly. These charts go out of date every couple of months, so we've got these stacks and stacks and stacks of charts. She uses that as gift wrapping paper for people. And it's the most unique gift wrapping. So something like that, where you've got stuff that you think is worthless to you because it's unique and it's about her. Whenever she goes to a wedding shower or baby shower or somebody's birthday, she shows up with this gift wrapped gift. It's not even about the gift. People are so impressed by the wrapping. They think, oh, wow, this is so cool. And now it becomes personal and she makes that connection.
Yeah. And of course, I was just in Stu Heinke's book. He's a writer for Wall Street Journal. He did a case study on me in one of the chapters. But one of the things I've often done is after an event or when trying to talk to senior executives, I'll send them a sword. And obviously, if you're known for edgy, then an edgy gift with a sword. One of my friends is one of the female leaders of one of the biggest companies in the world. I gave her the sword of Julius Caesar with Swarovski crystal in the hilt. And it's thousands of dollars. It looks amazing. It weighs like 8 or 9 pounds. It's made by the same swordsmiths in Hollywood who made Gladiators, the swords from Gladiator and all that stuff. So it's like a real blacksmith sort of like work of art. Put that on the stand, and then I try to mix it up so it's old school and new school. Engraved on the hilt, besides all this filigree on the actual blade of the sword, it says it's a quote by Tupac. It says, what is it? Time may come and go, but my soldiers are eternal. I'm saying that the lyrics wrong. But anyways, it's a great quote. All it means is if you've got a passion and a purpose, that's eternal, right? And so, I send some of those things out to people just as like hey, I'm here. What can I do to get your attention? Another thing is in a lot of my speaking, one of the stories I tell is, believe it or not, I went to seminary. So one of the stories I tell is from the Bible, and it's about tearing up shingles. And often when we'll go to a crowd, I'll just stop by Home Depot before I'm there, right? And grab literally a whole contractor's grade batch of shingles, slap our logos on the back, and then I'm throwing them out to the audience going, write down what you really give a shit about on the back of this. Just like I told everyone in step number 1, I'm like, here's your shingle. We're going to tear up some shingles. Write your goals and ambitions on the back of these. So just, again, that basket of shingles is $50. $50. And go tear them apart like it's the kind you put on a roof, literally, the kind you put on a roof, asphalt shingles, tear them apart. So, but it's that. So how do I get that? I get that idea because I'm obsessing about where I need to be, where I want to be. I'm obsessing in those moments of obsession, whether I'm running or whether I'm, working or meditating, whatever that moment is, an idea comes to me, and it comes to me because it's all I'm thinking about, right? And so it's not just a binary thing of does it work, does it not work, can we figure it out on a spreadsheet or not? It's about how do we keep iterating and changing and improving until we get where we want to be.
So Dan, I want to wrap up, and I want to change gears a little bit because obviously you're a high performer. You're putting yourself through these endurance events. Like you said, you've run businesses since you were 19, and you mentioned this in the book. And I want to ask you this question because I think it's important for people for context that even though we've been talking now for 45 minutes, there's still there's points in your life that were difficult. It wasn't like you just woke up out of the womb and you were always like this. And so I was going to ask you a really direct question, if you don't mind. Um,
Sure.
why did you put the gun down?
Well, I had a sense of fatality. And probably like I think about it now. I just knew that, the whole kind of glamorous story of, if something magic would happen and it wouldn't work out wasn't going to be my time. That it was actually, you make this decision, you're in control. You make this decision, it's over. And despite being incredibly drunk, um, I thought, and I think I've always been this kind of way at some level, super scrappy. What if there's another chance? Like what if there's a possibility that is despite how fucked up this whole thing is, it could all be put back together. Would it be worth it to try to give that a go? And the answer I kind of came to was yeah. So we did.
So it's the not giving up. It's just one. It could be one more moment, one more minute, one more effort, one more try. The next time you try may not be the pathway that's going to open the door to success, but it might get you in the right direction.
And if we can learn from these things. If we can, we talked about being human. It's the humanity that holds us back from getting to where we want to be. But it's also the thing that makes us capable of getting to where we want to be. And I'm not trying to be philosophical. I'm just saying, like, if we can embrace the things that make us flawed, they also make us wonderful, right? And that tenacity that would drive me to go to work on a Tuesday and come home on a Thursday and be an MMA fighter and run these races and do all this crazy shit and make money was the thing that was blowing up my marriage and my family. And when I figured out, okay, I need to put that same level of intensity in this other area of my life. I joke with senior executives, but I mean it, that probably everything I've learned about business in the last 20 years has come from being married. All of it. Because as we all joke, we know there's nothing like a woman that will break you. I don't care how tough you are, a partner can break you in about 10 seconds. And we all know the words, and your situation doesn't have to be my situation, but whatever it is, you can get broken in a couple seconds. And I think the reality is being able to go to that dark place and, like Lazarus in the motherfucking dungeon, say, look, I'm coming back and nothing's going to stop me not because I'm strong, but because I'm weak, but I want to be strong. And when we embrace this fully, we become unstoppable.
I can't think of a better way to end the conversation right now. Thank you for sharing that, Dan, and thanks for being willing to talk through that. I know you shared it in the book, but to hear it from you personally, hear you describe that situation and what it means for other people, it means a lot to me personally, and I know it means a lot to the people that are listening. What's the best place? I mean, people can go to danwaldschmidt.com. Obviously, are there other actions you'd like for them to take? Are there any causes that you want to make a shout out for that you would like for people to check out? Maybe something important that they don't know about that's important in the world that you're supporting, or that you wish just people would be more educated about?
Yeah, I mean, one of the big things I spent a whole last weekend with 400 principals in Maine, and I came away and I told them 100% of the money from the conference, not 100% of the profits, 100% of the actual money from the conference goes to an organization called To Write Love in Her Arms, TWOLA. And I love TWOLA because they've made suicide prevention awesome. Like, they've made it cool to be in pain, but in recovery. And I wish these sort of programs were out there when I was much younger, but it doesn't matter about whining about it now, right? Yeah. TWOLA, TWOLA.org, To Write Love on Her Arms. The initials of each one is amazing. I've raised thousands of dollars for them in running events and things like that where amazing people give the money. I just run. Other people give the money, which is amazing. But the number 2 killer of our kids is themselves. It's suicide. That's staggering. That we haven't inspired people, our own children, our own offspring, enough to fight on. And it's no wonder as adults we get stuck as entrepreneurs, we get stuck as business people, we get stuck as salespeople, because we just don't have this genome of warriorhood. And part of that warriorhood is knowing your limits, knowing your boundaries, expanding, flexing, putting yourself deliberately in the pathway of pain so that you can get better the next time. And I just love what Torla is doing as far as giving hope, giving help, and making sure people's stories are heard. So besides going to danwaldschmidt.com, go check out Torla. And if you, what I've learned in sharing my own story, Scott, not to take too much more time, but in telling my own story, I spoke in front of a group of CEOs, and probably 50 CEOs had tears in their eyes when I shared just briefly. And I wasn't even trying to tell my story. I just got off on a rabbit trail and ended up sharing some anecdotes. Is that, look, depression is real. These thoughts of negativity that grind us down are real. They're real. And it's lonely being the guy who's got to figure it out. And at times it's like, I've done all I can do. It's time for me to check out. And here's the reality is that this is something personal. We all know somebody who's had a family member commit suicide, sometimes multiple members. And so, it's organizations like this that are saying, look, enough is enough. Let's give people hope. And there's a verse I remember early on in Greek theology that says something like this: without hope or desire. I think the actual word, it's hope is how it's translated, but the actual Greek word means desire, which is the same root word where we get fire from. It says, without fire, people die. And that's true. And so that's where we started our conversation. I guess we're coming full circle back to it at the very end. We got people who don't have hope. And these are Torla and other groups like that are delivering that hope. So in my book, it's probably the greatest cause in the world.
That's awesome, man. Well, thanks for sharing. Thanks for sharing the story here at the end and sharing your advice to the people who are listening. I think there's a lot of good applications, whether you're a $billion company or a startup that's trying to get going. I think we came up with a lot of good ideas, and I appreciate you sharing that. And I hope that people here will go check out the website. The blog, your blog, I saw was identified by the Wall Street Journal, called it one of the top 7 sales blogs anywhere on the internet. So the blog is called Edgy Conversations. So definitely check that out. Check out the book for sure. It sounds like the hard copy is the way to go. I bought the Kindle version because I didn't have as much time to make sure that I got the hard copy. But I'm definitely going to go get the hard copy now that I hear how beautiful it is. So, all right, man. Is there anything else that I can do for you right now?
No, it's great. I appreciate the time together. And look, it's very rare we can have a real conversation. So it's awesome. I appreciate your time, and I hope the listeners take a moment to maybe put this on save and play it back a couple times next week.
That's a huge compliment to me. So thank you for saying that. What you just did, which was that we're having a real conversation, because that's what I want these to be. I want these to be conversations. I don't want it to be contrived. I just want it to be conversations and advice, and keep it as real as we can keep it so people can learn from it. So thank you, Dan. I appreciate that. All right, man. Well, look, have an awesome day. Be extreme. We'll talk soon.
Talk soon.
All right, man. Yeah. Well, there you have it. That's my conversation with Dan Waldschmidt. As you can see, Dan's a pretty intense guy, and he's been through a lot. We touched on, at the end of the conversation, a little bit about his personal life. I absolutely encourage you to check out the book, Edgy Conversation. He talks about the battle that he had with depression and how he went from being very successful to being very unsuccessful, and then bringing himself all the way back again to the person that you just heard on this conversation. So I learned a ton from the conversation, and I think most importantly, thinking about that framework that he likes to share, the Edgy framework. So it's be extreme, which is just be awesome. Secondly, D, meaning disciplined. Take the time, take the focus, invest the time in yourself and your customers, in your process, so that you can be awesome, because it's really, really hard work to be awesome, to achieve what it is that you want to achieve. The next piece is give value, the giving piece. So give until it makes no sense, right? Keep giving to your customers, keep giving to yourself, keep giving to the people around you, so that it's giving without expectations of return. And then finally, the human factor, the why, which he calls the human factor. It's how do I make my startup more human? How do I make my business more human? How do I make myself more human in every interaction that I have? What are the things that I'm doing right now that are sloppy or don't connect with my customers? So thanks so much for listening. I really appreciate it. I would love it if you've made it this far. It tells me that you've listened to the whole episode and you probably enjoyed it. So please, 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 I would really appreciate it if you went over to iTunes and left a review so that other people can hear and see this podcast and learn from it. And that's it for now. So this is Scott Sambucci signing off.